Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 24th session of the Bellingham City Council. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Upcoming meetings on August 31st, 2020 at 7 p.m. during a remote regular City Council meeting. There will be a public hearing on the Bellingham Police Department's Department of Justice Assistance Grant application to purchase a lightweight portable X-ray system that will X-ray suspicious packages faster and reduce the number of returns to the package. On September 14th at 7 p.m. during the remote regular City Council meeting, there will be a public hearing on the consideration of proposed amendments to the Bellingham Municipal Code Title 20 to establish regulations for electronic message signs on public zoned land, which are intended to improve public access to information on community activities, events, and services. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Lisa Anderson?
Here.
Michael Lillequist?
I saw him. He's here.
Okay. Pinky Vargas?
Here.
Dan Hamill?
Here.
Holly Huffman?
Here.
Hannah Stone?
Here.
Jean Knutson?
Here. Are you here, Mikey?
I believe so.
Well, that's good. Okay. We have one public hearing tonight. It's a public hearing to consider a request to add the residential multi-RM project to the 2019-2020 list of comprehensive plan amendments called the docket. Mr. Sepler or Lisa Poole, one or the other.
I think Lisa will lead on this.
You're not saying anything today, Rick. What's up? Okay, Lisa, go ahead.
Okay, just going to share my screen here.
Okay.
I want to make sure you can see it. All right, does that look good?
Yep.
Okay, great. Good evening, Lisa Poole, Senior Planner. I'm here to provide you with a request to docket the residential multi or RM project. City Council asked staff to leave no stone unturned in seeking solutions to the city's housing crisis. Staff presented several options, including reviewing multifamily zones, as many of these areas have been significantly underdeveloped with densities much less than what's intended in the comprehensive plan. The project has the potential to not only advance Bellingham's goals for diverse housing options, but also to advance other goals, including those related to climate change, a healthy environment, and compact growth. A little bit of background on the four project components. Staff is evaluating these four project components for RM zones. A simplified ranged zoning system that would include high, medium, or low categories to align with comp plan designations. A density bonus system that would allow more density if certain criteria are met. Allowing all infill housing toolkit forms in all RM zones. Currently, the RM duplex zone only allows limited toolkit forms. And setting minimum densities in all or certain RM zones. This project requires changes to the Bellingham Municipal Code and other minor amendments to up to 20 neighborhood plans for consistency with those code changes. Neighborhood plans are part of the comprehensive plan, and changes to the comprehensive plan must be included on the annual docket. The 2019-2020 docket was set by City Council last fall, and the code allows council to add projects to the list at any time, but they must meet the docketing criteria and follow a Type 6 process, which includes public hearings at the Planning Commission and City Council, which is why we're here tonight. Staff has found that the proposal meets the criteria for docketing, specifically A and B 1 through 4. More information is included in the staff report, but I'll highlight a few. The city has the resources to review the project within the timeframe of the annual review process. The project represents issues included in the comp plan, including housing options and compact growth, and the public interest is best served by considering the project in this amendment cycle due to the housing crisis and potential for lost opportunities. Staff recommends that the City Council add this project to the 2019-2020 docket for expediency. The Planning Commission recommended adding the project with a 6-0 vote on July 16th. If docketed, the code and neighborhood plan changes will go through a second Type 6 process with public hearings at the Planning Commission and City Council. That is when the merits of the proposal will be considered and discussed. Tonight's discussion and hearing are focused on whether the project meets the docketing criteria. I also wanted to plug our new online engagement website, Engage Bellingham, and that's located at engagebellingham.org. It includes engagement tools like polls and surveys, and right now it has the RM project, climate action, and the family definition, and a communication survey. More projects will be added in the future. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions before we go to the public hearing? Okay, Elizabeth, do we have anybody signed up?
We do. We have 3 people signed up so far.
Go ahead.
The first person is Jane Campbell.
Go ahead, Jane.
Hello.
Hi.
It doesn't look like you can see me, is that right?
No, we can see your name, but we can't see you.
Okay. Well, it's nice to be here virtually. This is my first city council meeting.
Oh, welcome.
I am looking forward to participating in more in the future. Hopefully we'll be doing it in person at some point. And I'm here as a member of the King Mountain Neighborhood Association Board. And more specifically, we've formed a subcommittee so that a few of us can stay abreast of the RM zoning project. And we submitted a letter. You guys will have that in your official stack, but wanted to just reiterate our intention here. As you know, King Mountain Neighborhood has a significant portion of RM parcels, and our board has heard some concerns and questions about how changes to RM zoning will affect issues of affordability, efficient land use, and then ultimately the livability of our neighborhood. So our board has the intention to keep track of what is going on with the project, and we're eager to see what work you all do on the RM zoning. And we wanted to acknowledge, we said this in our letter as well, but the decision that you all took to purchase parkland on the north side of town, we really appreciate that. It was a big move and a real testament to your commitment to our neighborhood's long-term livability. So thanks for that, and thank you for this little bit of time where I'm speaking here this evening. And I look forward to seeing how the RM zoning project, if it goes forward, will further the overall goals of livability in Bellingham. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Jane.
The next person is Thaddeus Johnson.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Thad Johnson. I'm speaking on behalf of the Whatcom Housing Alliance tonight. I just want to thank you for your time. If anyone's unfamiliar with the Whatcom Housing Alliance, we're a collective impact group of 36 diverse organizations. We have a shared goal of really creating more housing options within our existing neighborhoods to make them more socio and economically diverse. So we just want to express our excitement that the city is considering pursuing structural changes to the RM zones. We're in favor of streamlining rules for development, achieving planned density such that it's executed as planned, and more affordable infill housing. We think the code revision is really a good opportunity for the city to be bold in creating progressive housing policy. This could result in more affordable homes, more walkability within our neighborhoods. It could also have a positive impact when it comes to climate affecting emissions, water quality, public transportation, and we think local economic development, of course, as well. So in conclusion, I just want to encourage the council to take bold action for the future of Bellingham with this and other steps to address the housing crisis here. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next person is
Nabil Kamal.
Yes, hi. Can you all hear me properly?
Yes.
Thank you. So I joined today in support of the aims of the city and its departments to increase housing affordability, increasing urban density, and maintaining the high quality of life that makes Bellingham Bellingham. So I'm going to make my remarks quite brief, and I would like to bring my over 20 years of professional academic experience in urban planning to make two very succinct points. One is that increasing the supply of multifamily alone is not going to increase housing affordability. And that might sound crazy, but if you look at the data, you will find that even though we increased significantly the number of multifamily homes, primarily in terms of looking at the latest data from the census, came in the form of mobile homes, as well as under 20 units of multifamily homes. The reason why it doesn't do that is because it increases the draw from other regions, other investors and speculators, while housing cost, if you look at it, it hasn't gone down, even though the city has been quite aggressive in adding housing units, and rightly so. But what I'm trying to say is that in of itself is not enough, and if we keep doing the same with the expectation of getting a different result, then we might be here for a long haul before we can see some kind of change. So what I'm proposing is that in this residential multifamily plans, that the city considers to also broadening and supporting the planning department with additional tools. The current tools of blanket zoning entire neighborhoods without adding amenities or open spaces or services can lead to a form of downgrading of certain neighborhoods. Instead, like the city did successfully on Samish, we're implementing mixed-use development that provides spaces for complementary services, commercial, daycares, and so on, can lend to a higher quality of affordable housing that can also be subsidized in other ways. This is a period of recession. I know the cities don't have much money, but increasing the supply in of itself is necessary but not sufficient. So I'm saying that maybe the city should consider also other strategies like cooperative housing, land banking, and so on, so that it is not driven only by the market, which tends to favor upper end of the housing market. And that doesn't, the history shows us that doesn't lead necessarily to increasing housing affordability, as we can see today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else, Elizabeth?
I have no.
Okay, I'll now turn it back to council. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Council President Knudsen. I know we're looking at whether to docket this, but there won't be another opportunity for me to ask this question before the ball gets rolling, and the process of notifying neighborhoods may have already been determined and we wouldn't be able to weigh in on it. I'm just kind of curious, since I know what it takes to do a neighborhood plan. I was involved with the York Neighborhoods Plan, and that took us multiple years, surveys, a huge investment from our neighbors in order to envision what York neighborhood would look like for growth and for housing. And since this potentially could change across the board neighborhood plans, what is your outreach going to be like as far as I would certainly hope specific to the neighborhoods that will be changed, that those changes to specific areas of the plan would be identified. There'd be outreach directly to the neighborhoods so that they would know what those changes are versus just hearing that there's going to be a change in the comp plan regarding this type of zoning. I know that when major changes that have happened and neighborhoods and community do not feel that the information was as transparent to them, there are a lot of hurt feelings and assumptions that come up with that. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how you plan on, other than a couple of public hearings, which would be across all neighborhoods, I'm assuming being involved, how you plan on doing specific outreach to the neighborhoods whose plans will be potentially amended.
If I could respond,
Sure.
I'll start at the beginning. And that is, we're not proposing to change zoning in terms of the use. They're multifamily zoned and they'd remain multifamily. We're looking to simplify the zoning designations to a high, medium, low range instead of having well over 20 different permutations of square footage. It's standardizing rather than changing. That said, it's important to get that message out that we're not countenancing rezoning lands to different kind of uses, just perfecting what's there. And to do that, we'll do a couple of different things. We'll use all of the standard methods you talked about. Unfortunately, we can't hold neighborhood meetings in neighborhoods, but we can do online meetings for neighborhoods, and we will certainly offer to do that for any of the neighborhood associations there. We'd welcome the opportunity to meet with them, and we've reached out to the King Mountain neighborhood already to establish lines of communication. We'll also brief all of the folks because the notices go to everyone on MNAC, neighborhood representatives, and also all the neighborhood associations. So we do need to have to be innovative. We probably will do it electronically like we've done in the meetings for neighborhood meetings required before design review applications or other applications are submitted. And it is important to get the message out. I do think if you go to our website, you may have already been there on this project. We've got extensive information. We have 3 videos that really are slideshows that are narrated that really clarify what we're after and we're looking for. We've got great fact sheets and we have frequently asked questions. So I think we've got the right tools, but you're right. We really have to make a concerted effort to reach out to the neighborhoods.
Thank you, Rick. Anybody else have any questions or comments, or do we have a motion?
I'll move to docket.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Second.
I'll
Can you say
second.
again?
Motion been made by Councilman Hamel, second by Councilman Lillquist. Is there any further discussion?
Gene?
I have a follow-up.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Dan, and Michael.
Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off there. My question is kind of along the lines of Councilmember Anderson. I think that she brings up a really valid and important point in terms of engaging our public and our community on important decisions like this. So Ms. Poole had brought up the Engage Bellingham. My question is very simple. Is it working? Are people using that and interacting with that and being able to get their information from that?
Yes, they are. It's only been up and running for 2 to 3 weeks, but we are seeing traffic on it and it's really exciting. It's sort of a soft launch at this point because we're understanding it better and learning how it works, but we do plan on continuing to do more outreach and promotion of the site as we move forward. But it is working. Folks are commenting. And I will also say that as the pandemic was hitting, we had 2 open houses scheduled, in-person open houses. One was up in Cordata area and one was downtown. And we had all the presentations ready to go, the food ordered, and then the pandemic hit. So I think our Engage Bellingham is really our take on trying to not replace, but to provide some additional public input. And we will certainly be adding to that and reaching out to the neighborhoods. I also have an email notification list. All the neighborhoods have been on that since the start of the project, King Mountain included. So anyone who wants to be included on that, lapool@cob.org.
Okay, Michael.
Thank you, Gene. So just to remind people, if you don't know, we have a moratorium in place. So it seems ridiculous to have a moratorium in place to prevent underbuilding in RM zones and then not move ahead with docketing. So I think we have to. I think that moratorium was done in good faith, which is why we need to go ahead with the docketing. One of the tools that was mentioned is minimum densities. Minimum densities is the simplest and easiest tool, but it's also maybe too simple. I think Mr. Kamel's comments were very appropriate. We do need to do more than just simply specify minimum densities. We need, and as he says, supply alone doesn't always lead to affordability. Supply is sort of like a rope. You can pull it, but you can't push it. And city governments are on the pushing end. And so it doesn't always work. So my question, however, is does this whole project even make sense considering we're revisiting the entire distinction between multifamily and single family by revisiting what role family plays in our residential zoning designations? I'm just kind of wondering if we're going to complete this work and it'll kind of mismatch with the other work, or are we looking ahead so those two things dovetail and coordinate? So I'm referring to the work on family definition and zoning as it applies to that, and then this work on residential multi-zoning, which may be an out-of-date term in a year or two.
I think it does make sense. I think it makes sense because the units that we envision for the residential multi-zone are common wall construction, multiple units attached, different housing forms. And as such, we may define differently who inhabits them. But it will have a density requirement that may be different. So I do think it's appropriate for us to continue.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the docketing will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Lisa. We will now go to the 15-minute public comment period. Elizabeth?
Yes, the first person signed up is Patricia Suarez.
Go ahead, Patricia. Are you there, Patricia?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so I received an email, not really specifying what was going to be talked about in this meeting, but with all these definitions going around, I want to know how this new housing, whatnot zoning is going to help diversify Bellingham. Like when you define family and requirements for living in affordable housing, I want to know if you are considering BIPOC or minorities into your plan. And also if you have acknowledged if this has been done with native recognition, like you're building this recognizing that it is on native land, and if you have permission to even do that. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you, Patricia.
The next person signed up is Ralph Black.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Okay, Gene, am I live?
You're live.
So I wasn't, when I planned to speak before council, I didn't know we would be talking about what I'm talking about. So what I wanted to address, as council is aware of, is the effects this emerging ordinance is having on single family and housing we're trying to do up in King Mountain. You know, in the May meeting, it was discussed, and it was discussed again tonight, that the purpose of what we're doing is to preserve density in these RM and RM plan areas. And as Councilperson Anderson indicated, this process that you're just moved to docket could take several years. In the meantime, as we're moving forward with these, we're trying to put plats forward, especially our plats in the King Mountain area. We're running into the issues that unless every housing type within the plat meets one of the variances, or one of the exceptions, I should say, within the emergency ordinance, the plat as an entirety cannot move forward. It's important to understand that it's not moving, it's moving forward in essence of meeting the requirements of the emergency ordinance. We still have to go through the entire city's Title 23 comprehensive plan review. And so what we're asking council is that a clarification amendment be provided that simply states that under the emergency ordinance, any housing types that are currently allowed in RM or RM plan zoning, as long as the plat meets the total underlying density in that zoning, can move forward, it meets the requirements of the emergency ordinance. What we're hoping is that this will then allow us to move forward with some plats, get some much needed housing into the market while this entire review process is underway. So thank you very much. Any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Ralph.
Kevin Bardosh.
Hi there, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Dr. Kevin Bardosh, and I'm a research affiliate with the School of Public Health at the University of Washington. And I just had a couple of comments here about the deployment of 5G in Bellingham and indeed in Washington State generally. So I think it's important to recognize that there's quite a number of scientists that are concerned about our rollout of 5G technology. It's important to realize that in 2011, radio frequency radiation was classified as a class 2B possible carcinogen by the IARC, which is the International Agency for Cancer or Research on Cancer. It's affiliated with the WHO. Class 2B, other Class 2B substances include lead and DDT and a huge number of other possible carcinogens. Since then, the National Toxicology Program run by the US, affiliated with the NIH here in the US, released the results of the largest animal study on cell phones and cancer, and they found, quote, clear evidence of cancer in both the heart and the brain of rats, and that was in 2018. So the WHO is going to revisit this classification of whether cell phones are possibly carcinogenic or carcinogenic in a number of years. But in the meantime, we are now deploying an extensive new infrastructure of radio frequency radiation, of which there is actually very little science behind the safety of the technology. So a recent review paper that came out just this week on millimeter waves, which is what 5G is going to be using, found only 99 studies, many of them having biophysiological effects. And the author, who used to run the Finnish Radiation Protection Agency in Finland, says that, look, our safety standards are not science-based. We are making decisions that we are going to regret. We need to do the research before we release this technology to the public. And obviously, there's lots of conspiracies, there's lots of concern and anxiety around 5G. But I think it's important just to emphasize that when we look at the history of environmental pollution and environmental hazards, when we don't follow a precautionary approach, we often regret our sort of rushing into deployment. Also, just to mention, I know that this is a short period of time, but there is a major ongoing lawsuit here in the United States led by a group called the Environmental Health Trust, which is associated with, or led by Dr. Deborah Davies, who's a very renowned epidemiologist, and they are suing the FCC, claiming that the FCC is ignoring the extensive amount of scientific literature showing that radio frequency radiation is in fact bioactive. Okay, it has effects on humans and animals and plants. And I think you'd be quite surprised, actually, if you looked at some of this literature yourself. So anyhow, that's all I have time for at the moment. If any counselors or members of the public are interested, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for participating. Anybody else, Elizabeth?
Yes, Linda Fells.
Good evening.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Linda Fells, and I live in the Silver Beach neighborhood of Bellingham. I'm speaking tonight on the proposed resolution to create a broadband advisory work group. I watched the Public Works Committee meeting this morning, and I'm pleased with the modification the committee made to the resolution. However, I still have issues with the timeline and the scope of work. I worked as a software developer for the federal government for over 20 years. I realize governments work slowly. I also know that progress can be sped up with the careful planning and development of a scope of work. In the proposed resolution to create this broadband advisory work group, under section 3, work group scope of work, subsection B.
The back porch.
Excuse me? Oh.
That was somebody else talking. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Under that section 3, subsection B, I find some of the tasks you're asking the work group to perform should have or probably have already been done by the city staff. For example, subsection 1, survey existing broadband service options. Section 2, inventory existing broadband infrastructure, which I infer from the map that Eric Johnston displayed this morning probably already exists. And of special interest to me is the phrase in subsection B where the scope of work includes, and I quote, the following items provided there is sufficient funds in the authorized budget, end quote. If the scope of work is padded with items the city staff can do or probably has already done, and sufficient funds are an issue, then I submit that this work group's scope of work needs to be planned with more care. Many of us believe we need fiber to the home and premises sooner rather than later, and waiting until the end of 2021 for this work group's report to then be considered by the city council, I think really slows down the progress in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
The next person is Marcus D. Stidham.
Hi, this is Marcus D. I am so sorry that I accidentally had my mic unmuted there and stepped on the last speaker. So my apologies. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. It's greetings, esteemed council. It's good to be with you here tonight. And I know that I have spoken in recent sessions about camp cleanups and the need for some reform there. And I believe I've detailed that pretty thoroughly in previous sessions, as well as in the Homeless Strategies Work Group, where I sit as the homeless advocate for Whatcom County. And I want you to know that I've drafted a rather lengthy email today and submitted that to the Homeless Strategies Work Group for public record, as well as advancing it to all of your desks in your email. And so I encourage you to please read this. I encourage you to please understand that this is still an emergency pandemic, and the homeless plight in our county is dire. And I encourage you to give veracity to my statements. I took a long time drafting that email, and I took months in my investigation, and it's not concluded yet. Having said that, not only am I the homeless advocate for Whatcom County, I am also the vice chair for Homes Now, and I'm glad to just proffer. We've got solutions when you guys are ready to realize we've got this problem. And so when that happens, we're your partners still. We're here. We're agile. We're fleet of foot. We're all volunteer, and we really want to alleviate the health problem. The homeless issues in Bellingham are egregious. We have hundreds of people who are still unsheltered, and I want Homes Now to be part of the solution with you. I encourage you to partner with us as we move forward with solutions. Just ask, we've got them, and I hope you do. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Marcus.
Sherry LaPoff.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I am Sherry Lapoff. I've been a resident for 39 years. Tonight, I'm addressing the nasty episode of demeaning harassment toward a homeless, mentally ill man 1 year ago. This was not a prank. This is a peek into the minds and hearts of the officers involved in that. They received a piece of paper for punishment. Had I even had the slightest inclination to have anything like that happen, that I was responsible for when I worked for St. Joe's for 34 years, I would have been fired on the spot and escorted out, and I have seen it done for much lesser issues. It's appalling that these people have been allowed to roam around, these officers have been allowed to roam around town. I am one of hundreds of people who devote time, money, energy, and care to this homeless community. And to slap us in the face with such disdain and disrespect is absolutely heartbreaking. I've heard it all over town with people that do this. The morning I heard about it, I cried all morning. I'm asking the council for increased consideration, oversight, transparency, and money to those of us who must live on the street, and as well as the ones who are called to be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Kanui Rappaport.
Good evening, Mayor Seth Leewood, Council Members Hannah Stone, Gina Knudsen, Daniel Hamill, Pinky Vargas, Lisa Anderson, Michael Lillquist, Holly Huffman, as well as community members listening in. My name is Kanui Rappaport. I live in the Roosevelt neighborhood in Bellingham, and I've been a resident here for about 3 years now. I'm sharing my thoughts about topics brought up in this council meeting today, and I'm reading out the email I've sent to this council. The topic I'm speaking about is on defunding the police and reallocating these funds to services that really are needed in our community. This touches on the listening sessions, police accountability, and a cahoots alternative discussed today. This brings issues of litigation and the recently revealed prank by the police department on a community member with mental health issues. In the 1 p.m. Meeting of this city, thank you for sharing the voices of those involved in programs related to cahoots. Thank you, Dan Hamill, for saying the time is now, the how can come later. In the 2 p.m. Committee of the Whole, additional litigation funds were being voted on, but there was no discussion about the past 3 settlements the City Council has made regarding excessive use of force by our police, including 2016 Officer Esparza, 27 Officer Dalva, and 2018 Officer Laughlin. A police oversight board was discussed at the 2 p.m. meeting as well. I commend efforts of accountability promoted by C2C and others. However, it must be civilian-led, unlike all of the other oversight boards existing today. In fact, this may increase funding for police, and for critiques, I would suggest you look at the source Critical Resistance on the internet. I agree with Hannah Stone, the issues of race extends to all sectors. However, the police still are disproportionately biased. Last month's use of force of data, 16% of the force was used against Black people, 10% for Latinx in Bellingham, yet those groups are a significantly smaller percentage of our population. Thank you, council members, for your feedback. Mayor Fleetwood, you quoted Kendi. He has also said, I support defunding the police. We know, quote, we know areas with higher levels of poverty tend to have higher levels of violent crime, end quote. There is a need nationally and locally to defund the police. It's not the case of a few bad apples. There's been calls by individuals, 70 individuals, to remove police presence from schools. And as it stands, the Defund BPD coalition has delivered demands to the mayor and the city council for a 50% cut to our police in 11 different demands. Some of the ones that I'm most passionate are mental health services, cultural spaces, food sovereignty, and housing. These demands are located at tinyurl.com/BPD petition. And you can read more about our work at defundbpd.org about those people's work. Feel free to contact me to let me know what action steps you council members and the mayor are taking on these items. You have my contact information. And to end off, I want to announce a march for the community members who want to get involved in these issues, and to the council members, get off our next march in solidarity with Rev. Al Sharpton's March on Washington. That's this August 27th from 10 to 1 at the Cornwall Rose Garden. Thank you for your time, your focus today, in these upcoming days and in the past, and I look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Brell Froby.
Good evening. My name is Brell Froby, and I'm a resident of the Birchwood neighborhood. And I'm going to be reiterating some of the same things that have just been spoken. In the past few weeks, the mayor and hopefully members of the city council have been listening to the race and justice listening sessions. In the next few days, we will be hearing from the mayor whether he actually listened to the overwhelming call during these listening sessions to divest funding from Bellingham Police Department and invest in community-led health and safety systems, as well as other programs for community well-being. I am looking forward to hearing if this demand was heard and if it will be reflected in the mayor's budget proposals. In the future, I encourage the city council and mayor to find new ways to listen to our community and involve community members in crafting a budget that will uplift community members that are most marginalized and oppressed. I encourage the city council and the mayor to include the demands put forth by the Defund BPD coalition, which they received via email today. The demand states, quote, "We stand in solidarity with the demands laid out by Black Lives Matter and BIPOC leadership calling for defunding the police in Bellingham. We call for at least a 50% cut to BPD funding for the 2021-22 budget and reallocation of those funds toward community-led health and safety systems, as well as other programs for community well-being. We urge city officials to admit their laxity as complicity and to restore their integrity and perceived good faith from the community by realizing these demands. We expect funding to be reallocated from BPD to these programs in ways that may include funding community organizations who can handle the infrastructure of program creation and or expansion. 1, expanded mental health services. 2, safe, secure, and affordable housing for our community. 3, expanded substance abuse treatment and harm reduction services. 4, community and cultural spaces for Black and Indigenous people. 5, supporting Black and Indigenous economic development. 6, expanded domestic violence and sexual assault services. 7, workers' cooperatives. 8, food sovereignty programs. 9, community land trusts. 10, diversity, equity, and inclusion in education and youth programs. And 11, expansion of early child care and before and after school care programs. The programs outlined above are examples of what would make our community truly equitable, safe, and thriving. These are some of many community programs and ideas for how to use funds from the BPD budget in a way that prevents crises and suffering, as well as promotes health, well-being, and prosperity for marginalized communities, rather than arresting them. We expect you to listen to the needs and ideas of the community when forming budgets. We look forward to receiving your response. For those of you who are listening tonight, please join this coalition and sign the Action Network petition for these demands that was started today. Please visit defundbpd.org for more information and further actions, and stay tuned for many vibrant protests in the upcoming 2 weeks. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
The last person I have signed up is Mary McIntosh.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary McIntosh, and I want to speak to you about Chief Dahl today. Chief Dahl seems to be making a lot of excuses for people's behavior, and not a lot of pushback is being given by you, the people that are to be holding them accountable. Chief Dahl is specifically accountable. It is atrocious and astonishing and disgusting and horrifying that the police officers that pulled that prank against the homeless mentally ill man are still on duty and still working today. Chief Dahl is responsible for that. Chief Dahl has made excuses for them and allowed them to remain on duty. That is unacceptable. And it's up to you, our city council, to hold him to a better standard than that. Also, Chief Dahl is saying that in the cleanups, the homeless camp cleanups, that they are following protocol, they're following the CDC standards. But there is nothing in writing that's been given to anyone. There is absolute proof that he is not following those standards. And you, the city council, are not holding him responsible. It's up to you to do something. That is what your position is for. That's why you're in that position. And you just shrugging and looking the other way has got to stop. We need you. We need you to hold Chief Dahl responsible for these things that he's doing to our community and our most vulnerable members of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
No one else.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. We will now go to the mayor's report.
Thank you, President Knudsen. Be brief tonight. First off, next week, we've got a council meeting in a week, and I look forward to giving a report, a COVID update presentation. Lots to discuss since our last council meeting, and reference to things coming this fall. Little information about the census. I recently signed on to a letter from Washington leaders urging Congress to extend the 2020 census reporting deadlines and provide additional funding for census needs. But you can still go back and get yourself counted. I guess about 70% of the people in Washington thus far have been counted. Of course, the census helps determine funding communities receive for essential public services, including schools, healthcare, public safety, transportation, and more. So I'll keep you posted on the status of the effort to urge Congress to extend the deadline so that everyone can get counted. Just the briefest plug for Engage Bellingham, because it's come up a couple of times tonight. Engage Bellingham, for those that aren't aware, is the city's new online venue for gathering public feedback. The site gives people opportunities to provide feedback and participate in discussions about city decision-making processes through convenient, easy-to-use online platform. And this new tool will fill a vital public process and role while COVID-19 requirements restrict public gatherings. So if people are curious about Engage Bellingham, you can go to the City of Bellingham website. Of course, we just completed last week the listening series on race and justice. We talked about it today in the committee meeting. And in the coming days and weeks, we're going to be putting together more information, assessing the information, analyzing it, presenting back statistics we learned from it, as well as recommendations for next steps in the process. As we indicated all along, this was a first step in a continuum of the work that we are all committed to doing as it relates to dismantling structural racism and defining how to do that. I look forward to collaborating with all of you in that work. I appreciated our conversation today in the committee meeting as it related to the 24/7 crisis response. One broad observation I have is that it seems that we have broad agreement and commitment to expand behavioral health response. And I look forward to working with council in the coming weeks and months as we craft budget and define what expanded behavioral health response means in our community. I've got a couple of appointments I would like. These are just information only. I'm going to be appointing a man named William Zabo to the Bellingham Housing Authority. That's information only. Also going to be appointing Jessica Sankey to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I have one appointment that requires approval from council. I will be appointing Rose Lathrop to the Planning and Development Commission. So this time I hand it over just to take a vote on that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Councilmember Vargas, second by Councilmember Hamel. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, council. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Chief Dahl to address council, and when he completes his remarks, it'll go back to you, President Knudsen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Chief.
Good evening, council. I am David Dahl, your police chief. First and foremost, I apologize again to each of you and our entire community for the misconduct of my personnel. Misconduct that occurred last year and recently reported by the local news media. Your collective reactions of outrage, disappointment, and just plain being sickened by what occurred were the same reactions I had when this incident was reported to me last September. Outrage that such an incident would ever occur, considering our organizational values and culture of service to all of our community. Disappointment that members of my department would take what is otherwise a kind and generous gesture of transportation, money, and food, a gesture frequently offered by your police officers to those who are disadvantaged and publicly praised by members of our community, and turn that gesture into something else is so upsetting. Thankfully, our organizational culture did not allow for that event to remain unreported, as it quickly came to my attention the next morning. At that time, I immediately acted by ordering an internal affairs investigation to be completed. A thorough investigation occurred and sanctions were issued to those responsible. While the investigation was conducted by the Police Department's Office of Professional Responsibility, it also included consultation with our city's Human Resources Department and Legal Department to ensure proper procedures were followed and the appropriate discipline issued. The community member who was at the center of this incident was also contacted and has been provided multitudes of services, not only before but after the incident occurred. Several reports include providing the individual courtesy transportation at his request, to medical care or shelter, buying him food to eat, and working with additional care providers for intensive treatment. Council, I frequently sit before you and tell you that you have the best police department in the world, with a culture of empathy, decency, and service. You have reported seeing officers in the act and heard many stories, reinforcing those facts from your constituents. Many of you thankfully shared these stories with me, and it is with great pride I pass those along to our officers. This incident is in no way representative of your police department. And I certainly hope that those are not hollow words, as I know full well that such an incident like this severely damages and even destroys not only your trust and faith, but the communities as well. I see this in social media posts, emails, phone messages, tonight's comments, and information from the community and from all of you. Council, this incident has damaged our reputation. Nothing like this incident last September has happened in our agency. It is simply not who we are, and I want to talk briefly about the officers involved. They had no record of disciplinary action. They have no pattern of improper behavior, and this is the only incident that tarnishes their records. Their personnel files all include internal commendations and community letters of praise for the work they've done in their 44 years of combined service. They're excellent employees who had a lapse of judgment on that day in September 2019. They were sanctioned at the time, and they each continue working hard to move forward, harder, especially now that they are feeling and living through the public embarrassment during the past 2 weeks. Some have asked for their termination. And just as I believed at the conclusion of the investigation into this incident, I believe now, just cause for termination did not and does not exist. Just cause is a legal requirement I must meet in employment law. Progressive discipline is intended to correct behavior at the lowest level possible. Suspension was considered and mitigated due to express remorse and personal accountability. I believe the corrective action taken have served the intended purpose of correcting behavior demonstrated in this incident. The discipline process followed organizational policy, the guiding principle of just cause, utilized by public employers, as well as input and review by human resources and legal departments. This ensured due process was met and discipline was issued in such a way as to sustain my administrative actions. Now, to ensure that our culture does not tolerate such an event to ever occur again, we continually engage in relevant training, appropriate supervision, and empathetic outreach to all of our community, especially those who are in crisis due to drug addiction and behavioral health issues. We've received great constructive feedback on ways we can enhance our policies, and I do look forward to exploring with you, Council, on how additional oversight can be implemented to heighten community trust and organizational transparency. I'm deeply appreciative to the members of our community who have shared not only their disappointment and anger, but also their continued words of encouragement, support, and forgiveness. It is these conversations of acknowledgement about what was done wrong, the fact that this incident does not define this entire police department, and the belief by our community that we are better than a single lapse in judgment. That begins the process of moving forward and constantly improves our organization. Council members, your police department is working each day, call by call, citizen contact by citizen contact, to build back any trust we have lost, and I continue to lead in that effort. Council, thank you for letting me have this opportunity to explain our response to this event.
Thank you very much, Chief Dahl. We will now go to our standing committees. And the first committee on the agenda this morning was Public Works and Natural Resources, and it's chaired by Councilmember Lillquist.
Thank you, Gene. That's kind of a hard act to follow. Okay, so the Public Works and Natural Resources Committee, I was joined in that committee by Council members Vargas and Anderson. We had 4 items before us. The first of those items was a bid award for Northwest Bakerview intersection improvement. If you'll excuse me, I've got to go to the right page in the document. Almost there. The Northwest Bakerview intersection improvements project includes pedestrian and bicycle safety efficiency improvements at that intersection. The city received 6 bids to do this work. It was open in August 6, 2020. Granite Construction Company was the responsible bidder who submitted the lowest responsive bid of $374,656, including any sales tax, which was below the engineer's estimate. As was discussed this afternoon, this is phase 1 of the work to do a variety of safety improvements, turning restrictions, pedestrian crossing improvements, continue the bike lanes through. Phase 2 would be something far more expensive and complicated, potentially a roundabout at that intersection. And that's not happening anytime soon. So this morning, the committee unanimously recommended approval of the bid, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Lillquist, second by Councilmember Vargas. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
And the next item was a bid award for Harrison Street slope stabilization. This project includes pond excavation and modification, slope excavation and embankment, bentonite soil treatment within the pond detention footprint, access road construction, modular block wall construction, water main installation, under drain pipe installation, erosion control, blanket installation, reuse of native topsoil, seeding, planting, maintenance. It's really much easier if you go to the presentation. There's a nice cross section indicates how a wall will be built and the slope will be stabilized in an area which needs that work. City received 5 bids for this. They were opened on August 6th. Oceanside Construction was the responsible bidder who submitted the lowest responsive bid of $337,087, including sales tax. And that was just under the engineer's estimate. This afternoon, the committee unanimously recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
That's a tie there. Motion made by Councilmember Lillquist. I'll give it to Councilmember Hamel. I'm kind of light in the left ear here. So anyway, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. The third item was another bid award, but this one was for what's known as an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract. Basically, it's on call. And this on-call contract is to serve the multiple hearth incinerators and to repair and maintain them. These incinerators are how we handle the solids, the waste solids down as a sewage treatment plant. Our long-term plans are to replace that old technology, that aging machine well past its lifespan with a biodigestion process. However, we need to maintain that old equipment until then. There's only one company basically in the United States that we could find that does this work. They helped us work on it before. They were the lowest responsive, the only responsive bid from the Industrial Furnace Company of Rochester, New York. Their bid was $36,431.50, which is basically kind of the one-time cost. The whole contract can go up to $500,000, but that depends on whether or not the work is needed and what the work is. Again, this is an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, kind of as needed contract. The money for this comes from the sewer fund, comes from the sewer fees themselves. Total amount up to $500,000. This afternoon, the committee unanimously recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Anderson, motion made by Councilmember Lillquist, second by Councilmember Anderson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Okay, the final item was a resolution. The agenda item is called Bellingham Municipal Broadband Access, Equity, and Affordability. Technology and internet access are a basic societal need, and some local communities have begun to create municipal broadband, that is public fiber networks, to overcome the digital divide and to address issues of access, equity, and affordability for residents. Bellingham's existing public fiber network was built out to connect city facilities and public safety operations, and in addition to schools, and it may have the capacity to support other uses. We have in the 2019-2020 budget funding for a business plan and study to consider options for municipal broadband, and we have an attached resolution. The resolution was modified today in committee. First of all, the purpose of the work group is to evaluate the possibility of municipally owned broadband infrastructure as one way to further the goals of greater availability, affordability, and equitability and quality of broadband access across the community. Within the scope of work, it indicated that the focus of the work group By the way, the work group is consisted of volunteer citizens who would then work with a paid consultant and a neutral facilitator to proceed this work forward. In the scope of work, the focus was to be on broadband and fiber optic networks, but there was some exclusion language in there originally, which said what they were not supposed to consider. This afternoon, the committee in section 3, subpart subpart E, we struck most of that paragraph. We struck everything after the first sentence, which is basically the exclusions, leaving only the positive purpose behind. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion as unanimously recommended by the committee to approve the resolution to establish this advisory group with the modified scope of work, and then return to you, Gene, to see if there's discussion in a second.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Councilmember Lillquist, seconded by Councilmember Anderson. Is there any further discussion? Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mike.
I kind of want to respond to Ms. Fell's concerns. The timeline in there, I agree, is probably slower than we want. I made it clear in my discussions with staff that that is sort of the latest possible delivery date. I think the sooner we can appoint an advisory body, the sooner that we can hire a consultant. And that consultant, of course, will be hired with the guidance of the advisory body. I'd like to move this work forward sooner if we can. And there was some other aspect of her comments. She also indicated that she wondered whether the scope is appropriate, that some of the work may already be done by staff. I think that's correct. Some of the work already has been done by staff, but I think it's important to put it in the scope of work that the advisory body needs to look at that work and decide whether it really is sufficient. One of our concerns is that in this time of COVID and potentially cutbacks, we're looking for ways to advance public priorities without putting too much strain on our employees. And that's why I think an advisory body and a contracted consultant actually is the best way to move this work forward faster rather than let it languish, which unfortunately it's kind of moved forward slowly up until this point. So I'm definitely supporting this resolution.
Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion will say aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Michael.
End of committee.
Okay, we will now go to Parks and Rec, and it's chaired by Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Council President Knudsen. Today, we had 3 items before us. Joined for the Parks and Recreation Committee, I was joined with Council Member Hannah Stone and Michael Lillquist. The first item that was presented was a bid award for the Wharf Street Timber Trestle Repair Project, and the award went to Raz Construction. The city received 7 bids for the Wharf Street Timber Trestle Project, which were publicly opened on July 14th. And as stated, Raz Construction submitted the lowest and responsible bid for the project for the sum of $444,637 and change, which includes the Washington State sales tax. The engineer's estimate was considerably higher, and we discussed how Raz was a bit innovative with their approach of approaching the project, which actually helped bring this under by well over $200,000. So definitely a very good savings there. It's anticipated that the project should begin by early September and should be completed with 100 days of the onset of the project. The work will occur in coordination with other private building projects on North State Street and will include rerouting of the South Bay Trail for a specific time. This award was voted 3-0 unanimously, and so I move forward.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Anderson, second by Councilmember Hamel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
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 Carried unanimously.
Thank you. The second item before us was a resolution for the city of Bellingham temporarily reducing the fees for Safe Start Park under special requests. Normal park open space use fees require temporary adjustment to help support organizations that provide small group outdoor childcare and youth enrichment programs. expected from the cancellation of other special event reservations and activities in the city park. The city typically charges $30 an hour for commercial use of park open space. There is also a $50 application fee. The proposed resolution would reduce the permit fee to the standard administrative overhead charge of $50 with no additional hourly rate. The application process requires complete program application with insurance and health and safety plans. This fee reduction will create more small group programming options to support the local families this fall. And this was supported 3-0 by council, and I motion approval.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Anderson, seconded by Councilmember Vargas. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
And the last item before us was not something for a vote. It was more for information, and it was the annual report for the Greenways program. The fourth Greenways levy is in its fourth year out of 7. The annual report covered priorities, spending, accomplishments, and upcoming proposed projects. The levy generates more than $5 million a year in revenue, and this funding provides essential support for land acquisition, development, and maintenance operation. I highly encourage community members who are interested in learning more about what Greenways has accomplished this year and what their plans are for next year. Watch the daytime session for that PowerPoint presentation, but just to cover a couple of the highlights in case someone doesn't have time to go watch. Some of the completed Greenway priority projects included the acquisition of a neighborhood park in the Bakerview corridor, development of Cordata Park Phase 1, connect Barkley Trail to Sunset Drive, which is under construction with development, and to ensure public access to Little Squalicum Pier, and those negotiations are ongoing. And that would end the committee report.
Okay, thank you very much, Lisa. Just a comment, if there was one thing that's ever been put on the ballot in this city that changed this city forever, and that is the Greenways program. I mean, where would we be without that? And I know Seth was involved in the first one also, but it's amazing when people say what a wonderful city we have and the trails and the parks and everything. Well, it started with Greenways. Okay, we will now go to public health and public safety and justice, and the chair is Councilmember Dan Hamill.
Thank you, Council President. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Councilmember Stone for a report out this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamill. So this afternoon, our committee had one item before us, and on the committee is Chair Councilmember Hamill and also myself and Councilmember Huffman. And so this afternoon, our one item was discussion of 24/7 crisis response for mental health, substance use, and other public health needs. So the committee is beginning preliminary discussions about the need for 24/7 crisis response and 911 call center functionality to include screening for mental health, substance use, and other public health needs. Our committee is focusing discussion on primarily 4 programs at this point. One is crisis assistance helping out on the streets, otherwise known as CAHOOTS. This program is based in Eugene, Oregon. In addition, the Albuquerque Community Safety Department program, which is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Third is the Support Team Assistance Response, or the STAR program in Denver, Colorado. And finally, the Portland Street Response in Portland, Oregon. And so this afternoon, we were fortunate to have presentations from 2 of those programs. Kristen Johnson, who's the Financial Policy Advisor under Commissioner Joanne Hardesty there in Portland, Oregon, spoke with us about the Portland Street Response program, which has vans that are dispersed out through 911 dispatch. They're in the middle of pilot programs to determine success and sort of learn on the go. But these vans go out to responses that don't involve criminal activity and don't need a police response. And the vans are outfitted with, support items like food and water, as well as, first aid care, and really just to meet the community need where they are. And in their preliminary data analysis from dispatch, had determined that over 50% of their calls were related to unsheltered individuals in the community and their needs, which obviously guided their, the development of their program. But we also heard from Mariela Ruiz Angel, who is the ACS coordinator there under Mayor Tim Keller in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And ACS is the Albuquerque Community Safety Department. And so in Albuquerque, their response was to actually create an entirely separate department. So where they have the police department and fire rescue, now they have ACS as well. And so similar response out into the community, making sure that you have, the appropriate response at the appropriate time with the appropriate resources in hand. And so what we're looking to do as a committee and hopefully as a council moving forward is to really look deeply at the data that we have here in our community as far as 911 dispatch and outreach to the community to assess where the need is to make sure that the program and policy that's developed here in Bellingham is going to address those needs directly. So at this point, we're developing sort of a call list for, data points that we want the chief of police and the administration to bring forward at a future meeting. And so I encourage council members as well as the public, if there are things that you think are critical as we do this sort of data analysis to help form policy going forward, to please reach out to the committee members. And then we'll have a meeting coming forward. So if you want further information, I encourage community members, as Lisa Anderson mentioned, to go back and watch the committee meetings, just reminding the public as again, that a lot of our discussion and work happens during the day in committee meetings. And so encouraging you to go back and watch because all of those meetings are recorded and available online. So thank you very much and end of committee.
Thank you very much. We will now go to committee of the whole. We have 6 items. The first item is an ordinance amending the 2019-2020 biennial budget, increasing appropriations in the Claims and Litigation Fund. The attached ordinance would appropriate $750,000 in the Claims and Litigation Fund from that fund's reserve. Over the past 18 months, the Claims and Litigation Fund has faced higher than anticipated expenses in claims and damages, outside legal services and insurance premiums. The budget requires additional appropriation to ensure the city's ability to respond to litigation and claims to pay the annual cost of the excess liability insurance. This afternoon, the committee listened to Peter Rufato and the finance director, and the committee of the whole recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made by the chair, seconded by Councilmember Hamel. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The second item is the city signature on a rezone and comprehensive plan amendment docket application. The project proponent has prepared a rezone and comprehensive plan amendment docket application for the upcoming review cycle. The subject application includes 2 parcels that are not owned or under control of the proponent. One is owned by the Port of Bellingham and the other is owned by the city of Bellingham. In order to submit the docketing application, signatures from both entities are required. Signature by the city on docketing application allows said application to be reviewed and considered through the legislative process, but does not constitute approval of the proposal itself. Staff seeks council's authorization for the mayor to sign the docketing application on behalf of the city. The city committee of the whole recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made by the chair and seconded by Councilmember Anderson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. The third is discussion of a police civilian oversight board. Civilian oversight boards to oversee certain aspects of the police activity or increase police accountability have been adopted in at least 200 cities. According to the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, the Bellingham City Council will begin discussions on whether such a board would be appropriate for the Bellingham. I'd like to turn it over now to Councilmember Hamel to make a few remarks. He's the one that brought this forward.
Thank you, Council President. This afternoon, council members discussed their ideas and vision around a broader and perhaps multi-departmental or even a citywide type of oversight committee, ombudsman, or other independent third party. We discussed how people would or could access the oversight, the importance of recognizing our community's trust or lack thereof. We asked that the mayor's office provide more information on the administration's perspective, including whatever labor issues that oversight would bring forward. Also asked for further engagement from the community, from community partners that were co-sponsors of the listening series to get their feedback, seek feedback broadly with groups that were not represented on those calls, engage with members of the community that have been impacted by our criminal justice system, especially Black and Indigenous people of color, and work towards establishing some type of oversight committee quickly. And that's what I heard from council members this afternoon, was that there was a desire to move quickly on this. And I'll turn it back over to you, Gene.
There's a motion. I'll say it here in a minute. Councilmember Littlequist.
Thank you. I guess I just want to respond to the comments of one person this evening, which is probably maybe a feeling other people have too, that maybe the council is just shrugging and looking the other way. Anything but. There has been numerous vigorous conversations between myself and I'm sure most everyone else in City Hall leadership. But please realize that labor laws prevent politicians and the city council from intervening in disciplinary actions for personnel. That's not our role. We legally can't do that. But what we can do is something ahead of time by establishing accountability and transparency mechanisms, such as an oversight board, an inspector general, an ombudsman, a review board, something. This is what the city council can do, not get involved in individual incidents of misbehavior and discipline, but in setting up a system that handles those incidents better. So yeah, I'm not shrugging my shoulders. No one's looking the other way.
Very well said, Michael. Thank you very much. There was a motion this afternoon. Well, let me ask anybody else. Is there anybody else that wants to make a comment? Okay. The motion this afternoon was to ask the mayor to bring forward a report on how his administration handles complaints. That's the beginning of this discussion, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made by the chair, seconded by Councilmember Hamel. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next item was a discussion of city council staffing needs. On July 6, 2020, the council's legislative assistant announced her last day of work would be August 28th of this year. In preparation for this transition, Council President Gene Knutson convened a committee of 3 council members under him, Hannah Stone, Pinky Vargas. The committee met on July 21st to discuss options as presented by Brian Heinrich, Deputy Administrator, and Amalia Sullivan, Senior Human Resources Analyst. The committee seeks to reassess council office needs and then staff accordingly. For that reason, the committee opted to delay recruitment of efforts to identify a new legislative assistant at this time. In the interim, the following responsibilities will be delegated to existing city staff as outlined below. Transfer responsibility for note-taking record council committee meetings to Elizabeth Oakes, our deputy city clerk. Transfer responsibility for public hearing notices and preparation and distribution of the council agenda packet to Tracy Lewis, executive administrative assistant, with review performed by council staff prior to distribution. And transfer responsibility for public outreach, communication, scheduling, and logistics, serving in subject matter on expert on municipal legislative process, information resources on issues, and historical background to Mark Gardner, our senior legislative analyst. And we thank Mark for taking on those responsibilities. So that's where we're going to be on that. We'll be probably discussing it later in the year or early next year. Is there anything else on this topic? Okay, seeing none. We will now go to kind of a little item that Councilmember Stone brought forward, a discussion on local listening series on race and justice next step. So I'll let her speak about this for a couple of minutes.
Thank you, President Knutson. So this afternoon, again, I would encourage members of the community to go back and listen to the committee discussion. But as a committee of the whole, I just wanted to bring forward a time for reflection. I know that the listening session, during listening sessions, council members were, actively listening and tuned into those, that entire series, but at the same time, our faces weren't on the screen and we weren't able to nod or provide any affirmation to the community that we are in fact listening, and not only listening, but looking to take action forward. And so this afternoon was an opportunity for the council to speak candidly about our reflections on how those listening sessions went, and then most importantly, what steps to take forward. So I would encourage, I know that on the agenda today, there were a couple of items that certainly have been in the works for a while, but resonate as well within the listening sessions, that being police oversight as well as 24/7 crisis response. So I would just encourage people to listen to that, and also to know that the council is looking to take positive steps forward to, try and dismantle racism on a real systemic level here within the city of Bellingham, and that it's going to take all of us working together. And so I hope everybody's ready to step up to the table and to be engaged in that process. So thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Is there anything else on this? Just to say what I said this afternoon, big thank you to the mayor's office, to the county, to everybody who participated in this, to our staff, Janice Keller, the IT department, everybody put this on. These are not easy to do, and it was really interesting to sit and listen to people speak. And I think this is the beginning of something that we could periodically do. Hopefully, when COVID is over and we can all get together again, we can. When I first was elected, I did a town hall meeting every couple months. So that's something that we could probably do in the future. But I just want to thank everybody for putting it on, and it ran very, very well. We do have approval of the July 20th evening session.
Move approval. Minutes.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Lillquist, second by Councilmember Huthman. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Under all new business, we celebrated Monique Kerr's last council meeting today. She was very well known in the community, very well liked. She did a great job for us, and we wish her all the best. She's gonna do great things. Is there anything else under old or new business? Councilmember Hamel.
Thank you, Council President. Be brief. I've got 3 items. I want to thank City Engineer Chad Schulhauser and Project Manager Steve Day from Public Works for providing Councilmember Lillquist and Policy Analyst Mark Gardner and myself for a tour of the diversion dam removal project. This is an important environmental justice victory. 16 miles of pristine salmon spawning ground will be opened on the mid-fork of the Nooksack. I wanted to personally thank Chad, Steve, and their teams for their hard work. Second item is I want to formally report to the community and to the council that the law enforcement assisted diversion program coming out of the Whatcom County Prosecutor's Office is slated to begin in September. This is another tool to help divert people out of the criminal justice system and into care that is appropriate for their individual situations. It ties in with the work that we talked about today, and it's going to be a good addition to the community. And finally, I want to report that the Whatcom County Prosecutor's Office will no longer be prosecuting driving while license suspended third, and will give stipulated orders of continuance for non-violent charges for 1 year. With no further charges during that period, the original charges will be dropped. Both of these legal changes have the potential of further reducing the jail population. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's good news. Anybody else? Councilmember Stone.
So the mayor stole one of them, but it's worth repeating. These were just sort of public service announcements and friendly reminders without any political emphasis on any angle, but just reminding individuals in the community, one, to participate in the census, how important that is to funding. So please, I'm pleading with you to engage in that process if you have not already. And the second is registering to vote. So we are in an election year, and just wanting to remind friendly reminders to the community to please register to vote. So thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. We received an email today from the health department asking for assistance to publicize and get the word out for the drive up testing. So I just wanted to share that. There will be availability to make appointments for drive up testing located in Bellingham, Blaine, Mount Baker, Linden, over the course of different times and different days. And to get more information, you can go to, in order to schedule an appointment, www.testdirectly.com. And to get more information about the COVID-19 at Whatcom County, you can go to www.whatcomcounty.us/COVID testing. But I imagine you could go to the health department site because that's a lot of URL to just spew out with no pencil ready to go. But community, please, if there's a reason to think about getting tested, you may have come into contact or exposure or travel, or someone you know that you might have had contact with was sick. The more testing, the better the data. And also, if you do get a positive result, then you can isolate yourself and help bring those numbers down in our community. So again, drive up testing will be available. Please take advantage of it. And you could get more information at the health department website.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else under old and new business? The public service announcement skills are wonderful, I can tell you that. Okay, we will now go to our executive session report. We had 3 items. First item is Ginn versus City of Bellingham. Staff provided information on litigation matter. I will now entertain a motion to authorize the mayor to enter into a settlement agreement with the following terms: dismissal of the lawsuit and resolution of all claims related thereto for the payment of $175,000 to the plaintiff.
So moved.
Motion been made by Councilmember Hamel, seconded by Councilmember Anderson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Second was potential property acquisition. Staff provided information on a potential property acquisition. I will now entertain a motion authorizing staff to enter agreements whereby the city renews for a period of 20 years and access easement across city property in the favor of Blowdale Timberlands Development, and in exchange, Blowdale grants to the city a right of first refusal for 20 years on approximately 3,000 acres of land located within the Lake Whatcom watershed in the south end of the lake.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Hamel, seconded by who?
I was the second. Lilliquist was the first.
Oh, okay. Michael made the motion and Dan seconded. Is there any further discussion? I just want to say this. When I first was elected, we hardly ever met on Lake Whatcom, and Dan mentioned it this afternoon. This is good news because let me give you some figures. We've almost obtained through our Lake Whatcom watershed program, which is only about 19 years old, over 2,500 acres. If you add this 3,000 and the 8,880 that the county got from DNR, you're looking at the first time the county and the city ever talked about this, 13,880 acres have been spared from development. That is a big deal. And I am more confident now that we're going to meet that TMDL 50 years a lot sooner than where we're headed, because the first few years, there was so much concern about our lake. That's all, we talked about that all the time, and rightfully so, but this is just one of the good things that people need to hear, because we're doing some great things out there and both staffs are working well together. And I'm really happy about that. It's just been great. So all those in favor will say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. The last is potential litigation. Staff provided information on potential litigation matter for information and discussion. No action was taken. Consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Lilliquist, seconded by Councilmember Hamel. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Well, the next meeting is there anything else to come before the council? Seeing none, the next meeting of the Bellingham City Council will be next Monday, August 31st, 2020. Meeting adjourned.